Good morning. This lecture video is all about the male reproductive system, specifically looking at the anatomy involved in male reproduction. Before we get started, give a general overview of the reproductive system. So basically, the reproductive system is going to consist of the primary sex organs, so that will include the gonads, which in a male is the testes and the females are ovaries. It's those jobs of those gonads are to produce sex cells or gametes, so either eggs or during oogenesis or sperm during spermatogenesis. They also secrete sex hormones, which would include your androgens, estrogen, and progesterone. And those hormones are going to play a role in the development and the function of the reproductive organs, so whether or not they're developing correctly and then working correctly. Also going to control sexual behavior and sexual drive, and then also the growth and development of other organs and tissues. There are accessory organs involved in the reproductive system in both males and females. These are going to include ducts, glands, and then external genitalia. So we're going to start with the external structures. So that would just be what you can see on the body if you were doing an examination, and that's going to be the penis and the scrotum for the male reproductive system. The penis is the external male sex organ. Sometimes it's circumcised, sometimes it's not, depending on where you live in this country, your religious beliefs. But basically what that means is whether or not there is skin over the tip of the penis. So if you are circumcised, that is removed. And if you are uncircumcised, then it is not. And then the scrotum down here, which is going to be the sac of skin and muscle that's going to actually contain your testicles. The scrotum plays a really important role because sperm production is very temperature sensitive. So the job of the scrotum, along with two muscles that are going to be involved with the scrotum, the dartos muscle and the cremaster muscle, what they're going to do is that when the temperature becomes too cold, they will actually kind of contract and pull that scrotum up towards the body in order to keep those to keep the testes warm. And then vice versa, if the temperature is really warm or too warm, then they'll relax and drop so that the testes are away from the body, decreasing the temperature of the testes. So the scrotum plays a really important role in sperm production in controlling the temperature of the testes and making sure that the temperature is just right for all of the cell production to occur. So let's start here with the internal structures and the ductwork. The internal structures, will start with the testes. So testis is singular, testes is plural, and this is the male reproduction organ right here. It produces sperm and it produces androgens such as testosterone, and it's very active throughout the entire lifespan of a male. Males typically have two of them. They're about 4 to 5 centimeters in length. They're housed within that scrotum, like I mentioned. It isn't until about the 7th month of fetal development that the testes actually descend outside of the body. So during the beginning stages of development, in utero, the testes will be found up inside. And then around the 7th month, they'll actually descend down to the scrotum. Inside the testes are these really tightly coiled tubules. They're called the seminiferous tubules, and they're going to form the bulk of each testis. They are composed of developing sperm cells, and the sperm will actually move into these different, or through these different tubules in order to leave, where they will exit out into the epididymis. So here's the seminiferous tubules here, and eventually they're going to go into the epididymis. And we're going to talk about the different cells that are involved in the seminiferous tubules when we get to the next lecture video. The epididymis, so from the seminiferous tubules, the sperm that exists in them are actually immotile, so they cannot move. They have not really formed that flagella yet. So they're going to be surrounded by testicular fluid, and they're going to move up into the epididymis, which is this structure right over here. Though the epididymis does not take up a lot of room, because it's really tightly coiled. If we actually straightened it out, it would be about 20 feet long. So if you think about that, that's quite the journey for the sperm to make through the epididymis, 20 feet. It takes an average of 12 days for the sperm to move through the epididymis. And the shortest recorded transit time in human beings was actually 1 day, but on average it takes about 12. Fun fact for you. The sperm will enter into the epididymis and they're moved along by the contraction of smooth muscles that line the epididymal tubules. So there's smooth muscles in here that will contract and it'll push the sperm through. And as they move along the length, the sperm will start to mature and eventually develop the ability to move under their own power. So that flagella that we always associate with sperm will become active and they'll be able to move itself. And this is important because we want the sperm to be able to move itself when it enters into the female reproductive tract. So the epididymis is going to store, the very end of the epididymis will store that mature sperm, and then once ejaculation begins, what's going to happen is the sperm's going to exit the epididymis and it's going to go into the vas deferens. It's sometimes called the ductus deferens, so if you see it written that way, just know it also means the vas deferens. And this is going to be a really thick muscular tube that is bundled together inside the scrotum with some connective tissue, and then it travels up into the body. So you can see how this vas deferens is going to travel up through here. Up here is into your bladder. So it starts in the scrotum and it ends up internally. When it gets up in here, there's a structure called the spermatic cord, and I'll show you that in the next diagram. It shows it a little bit better, which is really important because this is going to contain the blood vessels and the nerves which are going to supply the penis. Interestingly enough, if you have a vasectomy done, that's going to be basically tying off the vas deferens, so that sperm then can't make it through the rest of the tubules, and you can kind of see this path that sperm will take down out the penis. So that's what a vasectomy is. So as that vas deferens extends superiorly up in here into the abdominal cavity, then it's going to run posteriorly down to the bladder, where it will dilate into a region that's called the ampulla. It will be kind of down in this area here. Sperm at this point, sperm that's found in here, is only going to make up about 5% of the final volume of semen. So there is all this other fluid that's going to make up semen, and that's where the rest of these accessory structures, the glands that we're going to talk about, they're going to play a role because they're going to secrete fluid that's going to make up the semen. So semen is only 5% sperm. The other 95% is going to be fluid that's going to be mixed into the sperm from these different glands: the prostate gland, the bulbourethral gland, and the seminal vesicle. So the seminal vesicles right here, there's actually two of them, the paired seminal vesicles. They contribute about 60% of the semen volume. So seminal vesicle fluid, it's going to contain a lot of fructose, which is a sugar that helps nourish the cell. It gives, or the sperm, it helps the sperm generate ATP and allows it to give it the energy it needs to move through the reproductive tract. So at this point in time here, the sperm is going to, the fluid is now going to contain both sperm and seminal vesicle secretions. It's then going to move into the ejaculatory duct, which is right down here. And this is a short structure that's going to carry the seminal fluid into the next structure, or through the next structure, which is the prostate gland. And you can see that prostate gland that's sitting right here, right underneath the bladder. This prostate gland typically is about the size of a walnut. It's made of both muscular tissue and obviously glandular tissue because it is a gland. And it's going to secrete an alkaline or a basic milky fluid to the seminal fluid, which now is technically called semen. So once the sperm, the seminal fluid, and then the secretion from the prostate glands all mix together, we officially have what we call semen. So as it moves, the fluid moves back down, it's going to hit this last gland here, which is called the bulbourethral gland. It's also called the Cowper's gland. And what this is going to do is it's going to release a thick, salty fluid. And its job, the job of that fluid, is to lubricate the end of the urethra so that the fluid can go through it much easier, and also to lubricate the vagina so that those sperm can enter in. It does play another important role by cleaning the urine residue out of the urethra. So in a male, this urethra is going to be the tube for not only semen, but also urine. And urine typically is a little bit acidic, and sperm, just like their temperature, very temperature sensitive, they're also pH sensitive. So the bulbourethral gland fluid will kind of wash away some of that acidity in order to not kill the sperm. We don't want to kill the sperm before it can get into the female reproductive tract. So it basically helps lubricate, and then it helps make the environment a little bit more alkaline or basic. And then this urethra is the tube where it will extend out to the penis, where then the fluid can enter into the female reproductive tract. So it connects it out of the body. And again, the urethra would be part of the excretory system because it gets rid of urine as well, and then also part of the reproductive system. So that's kind of the path that sperm's going to take from the testes out into the environment, the different tubes, and then the glands that are going to produce substances that actually make semen. So again, you can kind of see these structures again. Here's the seminiferous tubules right here. This whole structure here then is the epididymis. So once the sperm is made, it'll travel into the epididymis. Then it'll go up into that spermatic cord. That's going to contain the blood vessels and the nerves. And then it will go through then the rest of those different structures up in here internally to get out towards the urethra. So that's kind of a close-up of what a testes would look like if we wanted to look specifically at the seminiferous tubules and the epididymis. Also, the spermatic cord is a nice diagram showing that. Again, this is another picture showing you where some of these glands are. So you can see here is the bladder. Here's the seminal vesicles. So they kind of sit right to the sides of the bladder. Down here then is the prostate gland right below the bladder. And then over to the side then is the bulbourethral gland. So you can kind of see. And then here's the urethra, so where the sperm or the semen would exit. And in the next diagram, we're going to talk about the tissues that make up the penis or the shaft of the penis. So another just diagram showing the different locations of those different glands and the tubes. And, obviously over here is the testes. So looking at the penis, internal structures of it, the penis is made of 3 column-like chambers of erectile tissue, and their job is to make the penis erect during arousal. There are 2 columns. They are on the lateral side, and these are the corpus cavernosum. And then there's 1 column in the middle called the corpus spongiosum. So those will make up the 3 columns. This is the corpus spongiosum. You can feel when the penis is erect, it's a ridge that exists, and its job is kind of to surround, again, this urethra. And then at the very end of the penis would be the glans penis, where there's lots of nerve endings and aids in stimulating erection. So that's the anatomy. Just to quickly show you a graphic, just reminding you of the path that sperm will take. They'll start in the testes. They will become sperm, then they'll go into the epididymis, vas deferens, seminal vesicle, ejaculatory duct, prostate gland, where also the bulbourethral gland, which would be in between the prostate gland and the urethra, would submit fluid, the urethra, and then out the body through the penis. And those tissues involved in the penis would lead to an erection, which would facilitate that expulsion. So that is the anatomy involved in the male reproductive system. The next lecture video will kind of talk about specifically how sperm forms.